Her moment of rage becomes viral. Before anyone knew what had truly transpired, those statements went viral on social media. Because what happened between Aryna Sabalenka and Alex Eala wasn't merely a point or a rally. Fans questioned whether they had just seen the emergence of a new rivalry because it was such an unvarnished and honest event. One shout, one swing, and one unbeatable victor. Suddenly, everyone in the stadium halted in shock. Sabalenka looked at Eala as if she was shocked that she had lost at her own game. That wasn't how Eala was supposed to defend herself. She shouldn't have snapped. However, even the most composed players have odd effects while under pressure. Something inside of her broke in that instant. Or perhaps something woke up at last. What transpired would split the tennis community and cause this moment to go viral for both positive and negative reasons. A story was quietly developing behind the scenes before the moment went viral and the video appeared on TikTok, Twitter, and every tennis page on the internet. A story that went unnoticed until it exploded. Alex Eala had been moving up the rankings more quickly than anyone had anticipated. The Giants weren't meant to be in danger from her. She wasn't meant to be the one taking center court with a self-assurance that seemed almost unattainable for a 19-year-old. Furthermore, she wasn't intended to be the player that the top player in the world had to be concerned about. Tennis, however, is not a scripted sport. Each season, it writes new ones. In the conventional sense, Eala wasn't a prodigy. She didn't come with the fearsome power of an early career Sabalenka or the excitement of a Coco Gauff. She possessed something far more erratic. Critics were uncomfortable with his composure, patience, and precision. They said she was too calm, too quiet, and too young to do any serious harm. Even if she pretended they didn't, those remarks remained with her. And she appeared to feel something deeper inside herself with each victory. Something that is just waiting to explode. In contrast, Sabalenka was on the other side of the tennis world. A two-time Grand Slam champion, a formidable woman whose screams caused audiences to recoil. She was pure athletic intimidation. She was already half defeated when players entered bouts against her for years. Her serve was warming in addition to being quick. Her forehand was difficult in addition to being heavy. Not only was her personality fierce, but it was also unyielding. Nobody anticipated that she would perceive Eala as a threat because of this. The two had previously met in tournament rooms, player lounges, and practice courts, but there had never been any actual conflict. Not up till now. Not until the young Filipina's wins began to build and the season changed. Not until pundits started murmuring, "She reminds me of a young Sabalenka." Some athletes view comparisons as compliments. They were like sparks on dry grass to Sabalenka. Even still, hardly one foresaw the impending storm, despite the tension quietly building. Eala was not followed by cameras with the same compulsive attention that was given to top seeds. The majority of fans had a hazy impression of her. She was talented, disciplined, promising, and not threatening. Not quite yet. However, strain was rising behind every composed emotion Eala displayed on the court. Pressure brought on by expectations. Pressure from detractors, pressure from bearing the dreams of a country on her shoulders, and pressure from realizing that she would need to transform into a different version of herself in order to defeat someone like Sabalenka. Everything hinged on their next meeting, which was meant to be a regular match that started like any other. However, something felt off. As soon as they entered the court, Sabalenka grinned. For the first time, their energies clashed like two storm fronts colliding in the middle of an open sky, and Eala did not blink. No one was aware of it yet. However, this was the match that would alter everything. The internet was about to collapse at this precise instant. She finally lost it at this point. Everyone in the stadium felt something beneath the surface, something sharp and uneasy, even if the game started with the usual excitement. At first, it wasn't clear. It wasn't really loud. It was the kind of tension that lurks in specifics. An extended gaze, a firm hold on the racket, an excessively long pause. And it was hard to overlook the details between Eala and Sabalenka. Sabalenka came out fighting from the first rally, as if she intended to end the match before it had even begun. She sent power shots deep into the corners, hammering the ball with that distinctive savagery for which she was renowned. Under tremendous pressure, the majority of players broke. Eala, however, did not. She took each blow with an odd serenity, as if she had anticipated the storm and was prepared to face it head-on. The first trigger was that. Because Sabalenka wasn't accustomed to seeing that expression, not from strangers, not from younger players, and especially not from someone who was meant to be terrified by her presence. Something flared beneath Sabalenka's face when Eala faced his first powerful forehand at an even sharper angle. It's recognition, not terror. Realizing that this would not be a routine situation. Then the moment arrived that completely altered the match's energy. Nearly 20 shots in a lengthy rally, with neither player giving up. Sabalenka struck hard, in a desperate attempt to make a mistake. With a level of resolve that made the audience murmur, Eala pursued ball after ball. Suddenly, Eala launched a crisp, booming, and unmistakable forehand winner down the line, landing exactly on the baseline's edge. The stadium let forth a gasp. Sabalenka went cold. Eala didn't celebrate either. She just moved toward the baseline, turned around, and got ready for the next point. The second trigger was that quiet confidence and reluctance to accept Sabalenka's intimidation. Sabalenka turned to face the umpire. A brief grievance. There's something about the line. There was something about the ball being out. However, the replay was evident. The ball made contact with the line. Not even close. The audience was aware of it. The umpire was aware of it. Sabalenka was also aware of it. However, this was no longer about the point. It has to do with pride. Returning to the baseline, Sabalenka gazed across the court as though expecting Eala to respond. However, Eala's silence just made her more enraged. Her subsequent serve was delivered at a speed of 120 miles per hour, but Eala counterattacked with such accuracy that Sabalenka staggered backward in an attempt to reach it. The third trigger. Sabalenka mumbled something under her breath at that precise moment. Although the entire remark was not captured by the cameras, the energy abruptly altered. It was felt by the crowd. Eala felt it. And Eala's face lit up with emotion for the first time. Fire, not fear. The match was no longer about tennis after that. It has to do with control. It has to do with respect. It was about establishing one's place. After defeating Gesso, Aryna Sabalenka is back with us. Every point marked the start of the photo that would quickly become popular. The entire world. Everyone in attendance sensed the shift in the game from competitive to explosive. A nearly tangible change in energy. Every eye in the stadium focused on the same truth as the rallies got longer, louder, and more frantic. It was no longer a match. It was an altercation. For Sabalenka, Aya's poise just made everything worse. Aya responded to the Belarusian's massive forehands with a quiet accuracy that bordered on disdain each time. Nothing cuts deeper in the world of professional athletes than an adversary who refuses to break, even if it's not deliberate or evident. And social media went into a frenzy because of that unwavering calm. Before the first performance was even over, clips started to circulate. With captions like, "The kid's not scared at all," fans shared slow-motion videos of Aya's winning line painting. After losing a crucial point, others focused on Sabalenka's face and tweeted things like, "She's about to explode." They weren't only observing the game. They were anticipating the point at when everything broke. The rally that ignited the internet followed. When Sabalenka thought she had finished the point with a big cross-court shot, Aya slid, reached, and created an improbable flick pass that painted the sideline once more. The crowd didn't start cheering right away since the shot was so ridiculous. They paused, nearly doubting the reality of what they seen. The stadium erupted as soon as the line judge certified it was in, and Sabalenka's response went viral online like a spark striking gasoline. The microphones barely caught a mumbled sentence, a step forward, then a stare. It only required that. Fans on the internet analyzed each frame in a matter of minutes. According to some, Sabalenka cursed Aya. She was complaining to herself, according to others. Some people stood up for her. Some referred to it as intimidation. The video already had a life of its own, so the truth was irrelevant. Commentators joined in. Players from the past offered their opinions. Tennis pages posted side-by-side comparisons of Sabalenka's annoyance and Alice's composure, captioning images with phrases like, "the future versus the present." Discussion threads erupted. There were fan camps. The plot was just too compelling. Aya continued to play as if there was no digital pandemonium at all. However, Sabalenka was not exempt from the commotion. Cameras captured her breathing deeply, shaking her head, and holding her racket tighter than usual during changeovers. She was not going to melt. Not quite yet. However, she was being forced to go somewhere she didn't often go. There, she appeared fragile, human, and breakable. Half of the spectators was aware that the match was quickly becoming history by the time Aya broke Sabalenka's serve. While the other half waited for the unavoidable explosion, they observed Sabalenka. The court was no longer the only place where the tension existed. It seeped into live streams, group chats, phones, and the audience. Something was going to break. When that happened, the video would be viewed globally. The one that transformed a champion into a storm and a rising star into a headline. At first, Sabalenka's loss of control wasn't audible. It wasn't an explosion sound, a shattering racket, or a scream. There was just one quick exhale. When irritation eventually triumphs, athletes let go of their kindness. It was worse than any explosion she could have made, though, because of the hush that ensued. Because it was audible throughout the stadium. Every camera panned in, seemingly anticipating the next fracture in the armor, as soon as Aya heard it. It took place at 42 seconds. Set. Sabalenka fired a backhand that was inches off after another vicious rally. This time, instead of glaring at Aya, she whirled around and glared at herself, her box, the umpire, anything to deflect the internal strain. For the first time in the entire fight, she appeared cornered as her chest rose and sank. Fans would later call the break at that point. With heavy feet, she approached her towel while mumbling something that was only partially captured by microphones. It wasn't pretty, whatever she said. Videos of it went viral right away. She allegedly cursed at the umpire, according to several fans. Some claimed she was making fun of AW's composure. Nobody knew the truth. However, stories don't wait for information. They write on their own. And following the triumph over outsiders, Aryna Sabalenka joined us once more, calling Sabalenka a horrible sport. She was protected by devoted fans who claimed she was under a great deal of stress. The ferocity was condemned by tennis traditionalists. Younger admirers praised it, describing it as authentic, raw, and finally dramatic. Everybody had a viewpoint. However, Eala had a different feeling. Because Aya started to feel the burden of being on the other side of Sabalenka's frustration as it increased. It had nothing to do with fear. It wasn't intimidation. It was much more intricate. Athletes seldom acknowledge this. She felt accountable. Not guilty, but accountable for forcing Sabalenka into uncharted territory. Accountable for being the catalyst. And that emotional struggle intensified the impact of what came next. Sabalenka made the decision to go all in on the very following point. She served with such force that it reverberated across the stadium. Aya returned a drifting ball that sat upright in the middle of the court after barely getting a racket on it. Sabalenka gave it her all in the onslaught. A forehand intended to put an end to the game, the rally, and the uncertainty. However, the tape was clipped. The smallest touch of tragedy, the smallest kiss of the net. Sabalenka's face broke when the ball fell back onto her side. Her racket took off. Thrown enough to startle the stadium into stillness, but not dangerously or at anyone. The stands echoed with gasps. Commenters fell silent. Even Aya halted, not knowing whether to gaze up or turn away. Athletes don't want their moments to be publicized. Raw, unvarnished, and vulnerable. Fans weren't nice either. The video quickly went viral on social media, with comments like, She's losing it. She was mentally broken by Aya. A WTA breakdown is imminent. However, it wasn't the criticism that hurt the most. It was Sabalenka's and everyone else's awareness that momentum was no longer waning. The entire globe was witnessing the unraveling as it had already dropped. The match no longer felt like a competition as the dust settled and Sabalenka's racket touched the court. It was like making a confession. Unspoken, unacknowledged, but exposed in the fissures of a champion's poise and the ascent of someone who had at last taken charge of her own destiny. It wasn't a dramatic outburst that revealed the truth. It came silently. Ala noticed something she had never seen in Sabalenka before when she glanced around the internet. Vulnerability, not anger or intimidation. Beneath years of domination, pressure, and expectation lies a human moment. It was more than simply a defeat for Sabalenka. The narrative she had created for herself was slipping away from her. The tale of being unbreakable, untouchable, and unshakable.